6.7. R130. A, consideration of comments to Pacific Gas and Electric Company in response to their draft application for surrender of license and application for non-project use of project lands. B, consideration of a letter to California Governor Newsom highlighting considerations regarding Scott Dam decommissioning in consideration of Executive Order N16-25, and C, consideration of a letter to federal agencies regarding Scott Dam decommissioning in relation to recent executive orders from President Donald Trump. We have Patrick Sullivan and Matthew Rothstein here, and this is also something that we work on as a committee. It's myself, Supervisor Sabatier, Matthew and Patrick, Lloyd, and if you all have been following for the past, I don't know how long, as it's been the Russian River Water Forum, EEL Russian River Commission, all of that stuff, in regarding to the Scott Dam FERC situation when it comes to surrendering and decommissioning. And we have, if you've noticed, we've been talking about this within the last couple of years, but a lot of times it's on closed session. At this point, it looks like we're going to go ahead and start talking about it in an open because of the most recent activities and discussions when it comes to, I think it's called NERF, and then some agreements. And we're getting close to the commenting period when it comes to FERC and many others moving parts. There's a lot of media that's out there too that's talking about things and saying things when it comes to that. So we feel the need to be able to speak from our mind and speak from our stance and speak from a level of having, equal discussions, if you will, because a lot of times it feels as if there isn't, and there is a drowning of the stance that decommissioning is, the most ideal way. There's really, in our opinion, we've always felt like there's never been any proper discussion about having talks about how if we weren't to decommission, but of course this all relates back to PG&E because they're the group that is looking to surrender the license. And we'll go ahead and Supervisor Sabatier, if you want to add some things.
So I just want to kind of add a little bit to the timeline. It was Tuesday the 11th, I believe, that an MOU was approved by Sonoma Water. Humboldt County, who's not necessarily a part of it, also approved a similar MOU. Mendocino Inland Water, and I don't have the full list of all of those here, but a group of 6 joined a JPA, the EEL Russian Project Authority, submitted have been working with PG&E to submit their proposal to make it a part of the FERC process in order to keep the diversions going to a certain point. And good for them. That they're doing what they should be doing for them. But there's, I believe, some real big misconceptions about what's happening here in Lake County. A lot of people feel that we are involved in discussions to make sure Lake County doesn't necessarily just end up on the wrong end of the stick. Those discussions, they may have occurred, but they're very superficial, and they lead to negative responses as to what we're looking to obtain. And I have here a quote from the California Salmon Strategy that says, "The group is working to refine the proposal and address the interests of Lake County." And that seems to be the perception throughout many departments and possibly many counties throughout Northern California. And it's frustrating because that couldn't be further from the truth. We have been denied at the table multiple times to be involved in our conversations. This was happening in 2021, 2022, with the original notice of intent from the original group that was under Huffman.
Otter Valley Two-Basin Solution.
The Two-Basin Solution. Then the Russian River Forum came together through a grant opportunity that Huffman was able to provide for his counties. We were invited to be there, and every time we asked to present, we would be denied the ability to present. Finally, we were given the opportunity to present, and that was the last meeting they ever had. they really did not want to hear from us again. At least that's the perception that I'm receiving from that type of action. We are in the midst of one of the biggest human climate change experiences, and it seems like this project wants to ignore climate change, or at least ignore the fact that we have to look at a global perspective to climate change and not try to provide for one and not another. I feel that we look at water availability and fish passage to their spawning grounds as a binary choice. It does not have to be a binary choice. So here's a perfect example of this. Now, whether or not you are completely against fish passage, that's one thing. But fish passage, when we were looking at it from the two-basin solution, granted those dollars were from back then, so it could be a lot more, was around $80 million to provide fish passage. And we're looking at an enormous cost of decommissioning the dam. I believe it can go up to 500 million, and our belief is that's too low if that's going to restore the actual grounds below Lake Pillsbury. And the restoration is kind of a very nebulous thing. It doesn't exist on paper yet. We're told that those things will come. We're very cautious about how to move forward with that. But what most people aren't saying, and we've had two conversations where this was brought up. One was when we were meeting with Water Resources, who happened to have a consultant with us who is working with Sonoma Water. And even Water Resources at the state level was surprised when we said, well, you know that they planned on building a new dam. And the question was, is there any validity to this? Well, it's one of the options we're looking at. And to me, that's the only option if Sonoma County and Mendocino County want to have water during the end of summer season, or especially during the end of drought, because you're not going to get any more water if there's no more lake. And so the cost of decommissioning is in the 500 million range. What's the cost of building? So our plan, not ours, the state's plan and PG&E's plan is to destroy a community in Lake Pillsbury, destroy a water storage, and destroy another community somewhere in Mendocino County or Sonoma County, because you're going to have to flood somewhere in order to create a new basin and a new dam. And so the conversation is very myopic rather than looking at the whole of everything. And my two biggest concerns, we have many other concerns, is fire mitigation. We know that lake has been utilized for fire mitigation, and while we can't say because the lake was there at the time, potentially protected further movement into other communities. If that fire is moving south, that water would be utilized to help protect the fire from moving towards Upper Lake. If that fire is moving west, we are protecting it from moving towards the Ukiah and Willits area. And the water availability. I just don't even understand how you're going to have water during major droughts, which is where, again, the conversation of global warming just disappears for this one specific project that's happening. We know what 2018 to 2021 was like. We know that there was no incoming water into Lake Pillsbury. What do you think happens if there's no incoming water into a lake? Do you expect water to magically appear coming out the other side? So there is a lot of interconnectivity that is not being seen, and we believe that we are having a very myopic view of what this overall impact will be. All I can tell you is PG&E is trying to get rid of the liability, which I understand, but their impact to communities will be great. And so we formulated some letters. One of them is to Governor Newsom, who put out an executive order to help replenish and our storage of water throughout the state of California. And we are letting him know that it's confusing because you're in support of getting rid of water storage, but yet asking to store more. And we're also asking for a place at the table so we can have a conversation with him, because it seems that his administration believes that we're having great discussion discussions leading to positive outcomes for Lake County. And then we're also, we drafted a letter to President Trump and his administration, his Secretary of Defense, Energy, the list goes on, letting him know that FERC is in charge of making the final decision, and FERC would be working against the executive orders that have currently come out from President Trump, in the sense that there is the potential for energy there, and there is the potential for water storage there, and things are working against that as we speak. Overall, PG&E just submitted on January 31st their final draft for public comment. I believe March 3rd is the last date to submit public comment for that draft. And so we also have a public comment response to PG&E's final draft that we anticipate will be submitted to FERC, which is, I apologize to everybody, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And at the federal government, that will be submitted to them by PG&E for review, I believe either in June or July of 2025. And so I'll leave it at there because our public comments are public, they're attached to our item, and I'd like to pass it on to both Matthew Rothstein and Patrick Sullivan.
Just real quick before that, I forgot a couple things, so thank you for letting me interrupt real quick. One of the things about the process, like you said, in discussions with different agencies and different groups, there's always been the push, especially since we've got a lot of support from Congressman Thompson, and even Cecilia Curry put us on to a good meeting with Department of Water Resources for the state. In doing so, they've always asked the same question: have you had a lot of meaningful discussions with all these agencies? And one of the things is we do meet and talk with them, but at the same time, it's always with the preface that we need to come into the situation either agreeing with decommissioning, or we don't really have meaningful discussions. We're just there. And so for me, attending a lot of these, and I'm pretty sure for everyone else and our staff and for Lake County, every time we discuss something or we're there, there's always the assumption, and then there's always in a letter or even in the media stating, well, Lake County was there. I seen an article today that said we all played Kumbaya. We weren't a part of that session. We weren't even there. So there's always this indication and, this impression that we're a part of these discussions, and we're not. And if we aren't there, then there's the statement that, well, they don't care enough to be there. So it's a double-edged sword. I won't say the other statement I'd say. Every time that we've had a meeting where we discuss something, or even if we're in a situation at another forum, whether it be Two Basin Solution or something else of the like, there is always a one-up. It's always just Lake County. We've been able to get Lake Pillsbury Alliance to a couple of meetings and whatnot, but every time that we're in a meeting, there's at least 20 to 30 different agencies and people there giving their insight. As soon as we say something, there's at least 20 other ones kind of piling on top of us, stacking the chips. And so there's never ever, we acknowledge what you're saying and let's move forward. It's always, well, this is the argument to the fire situation. This is the argument to the fish, which is something we brought up before when it comes to the fish, is that the dam is actually helping the fish survive, because that's one of the main problems that everyone's using as a situation with the salmon. And in fact, last year, one of the agencies wrote a letter to FERC asking them to convince PG&E to raise the gates because of the seismic issue. They let it down, as you all know. They asked them to raise it for the very thing that we've been saying for the past 4 years. No one would answer it. When finally someone got to the point to answer it, which was Congressman Huffman, he had said, well, Eddie, that may be the case, but who's going to take it over? And I'm like, okay, fine. Why didn't you say that a long time ago, and let's have that discussion back then? So just giving you an example of the frustration we had. For me, it's not having that respectful dialogue where it's at. It's always these undertones and these other discussions, and then when something happens, it's unavoidable circumstances or something like that. But we have Patrick and Matthew, and I can keep going on for days about this, so I'll let you guys go ahead.
Can I add something real quick? I apologize. I do want to thank Matthew, Lloyd, and Patrick have been immense partners in our conversations. Their knowledge of this project, their research on this project has been absolutely amazing. They're going to introduce the SLR team, their work with the SLR staff has been absolutely critical to better understand what we're dealing with. I also want to highlight, and I know you mentioned them, I'm thankful for that. Lake Pillsbury has been an amazing partner throughout this entire journey. I'm thankful for their advocacy and for their knowledge of the area and being able to provide some of that knowledge back to us. So I just wanted to highlight that before we passed it on. I'm really thankful for you guys. Thank you.
Matthew.
Thank you, Supervisors. Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer. As your board is aware, the county contracted with SLR International Corporation to analyze the effects of the proposed Scott Dam decommissioning. And SLR conducted a thorough review of PG&E's draft surrender application and provided detailed comments for submittal with your board's own letter. Those comments recognize the significance of water supply, recreation, wildfire suppression, and other benefits of Lake Pillsbury and the Potter Valley project. Additionally, technical concerns are raised, and I'm going to share just a few examples. Slope stability at each stage of proposed dam removal and risk of landslides in the area of Scott Dam should be better understood before the project proceeds. Further, SLR affirms Lake Pillsbury has been an important fire suppression asset that has helped to keep small wildfires small, and indicates PG&E should provide resources and create a plan to improve firefighting response times. SLR also appropriately recommends PG&E consult with the County of Lake to obtain correct tax information and incorporate that information into their analysis. SLR likewise remarks that PG&E states the community way of life for residents surrounding Lake Pillsbury will likely be adversely affected during and post-construction, and PG&E should therefore identify proper compensation for those to be affected. Darme, Maria, Mo, and Wendy of the SLR team are present in Zoom if your board has questions on their comments or would like further overview. We really appreciate their partnership.
Patrick, did you want to say anything before we get started, or?
No, I would just, well, I'll make a brief comment. I just wanted to highlight that even in the new plan from PG&E, just as has been stated in our comments, there is not a real plan to restore Lake County. And I would just echo some of the sentiments that we heard earlier here from the supervisors, that throughout the process, it's often indicated that Lake County has been accommodated or concerns have been addressed. But even with these more expansive PG&E comments, it's clearly not the case. There does not appear to be the restoration plan for Lake County that's being contemplated for the rest of the river, should the dam come out. And I think that's just really important to highlight.
Thank you. And so, did you want the SLR team to speak, Matthew?
If your board has any questions of them or would like further overview, they're available.
All right. Any questions? Go ahead, Supervisor.
I do have a question. It's a rhetorical question. I know the answer. How many times in the PG&E report does it say unavoidable consequences?
Less over 100 times, I believe.
It has a, yeah, this is Darby Like I'm the project manager for SLR, and thank you very much, supervisors and Matthew and Patrick and the team. We are glad we have time to go through technical understanding or technical review of what PG&E has done over a couple of rounds of presentation. So really, this time, this version of the surrender application, they actually created a section called unavoidable impacts and not really providing a real justification of what those comments are. There are probably 20 plus or so, unavoidable consumptions, but really there's no basis for them. And as experts in the water resources, from management, reservoir management areas, we have seen very few unavoidable consumptions because the owner and the person in charge usually take more time to evaluate what the unavoidable circumstances are before they make a statement like that. Luckily, we do have the California process, the California Environmental Quality Act process, and also the NEPA process, the federal process, National Environmental Process. So hopefully that will open up. PG&E does acknowledge they need to follow through that, when they go through the next steps of the work. So that gives a reasoning not only for the county with our help as well as others to raise why it is unavoidable. It shouldn't be unavoidable. It should be at least addressed to the minimum level of unavoidable, if at all necessary. So I think that's a big red flag they raise in the.
Thank you for that. Did they fall off or something? Okay. But I'll just add something. I appreciate that synopsis or that statement because that's one of the things we want to address those. We want those addressed before we move forward. But there's this push to make sure this happens faster, and we would also like for our concerns to be addressed or taken into consideration prior to moving so quickly. And so that's where it gets frustrating for us. Is not having that dialogue, not being able to come together and actually have some real action or some potential action. It's just always, well, we'll see when we get to this point or whatever the case may be.
And if you don't mind, we've seen a lot of projects come in front of us. What we see are mitigations. Yes, there is going to be an impact. Here is the problem. Let's find out a mitigation. For the idea that so many unavoidable impacts are okay makes me wonder, have we even looked at ways to mitigate this? And I'll throw one, because PG&E is going to come up here and speak to us. I'll throw one to them. They have told us they will elaborate on their management plans after it's been approved by FERC. That makes us very nervous to know that you have to go through an approval process prior to knowing the details of what's actually going to get accomplished if the lake disappears. And without those levels of details, we will continue to advocate for what we feel is necessary for Lake County.
Go ahead, Supervisor Owen.
I'm also really concerned about the impacts of the sludge and the contaminations and the death of the fish and the environmental issues that are going to come along with that. And as I understand it, there was a lot of mining in that area where the lake now sits, quicksilver mining. And so I believe that the sludge, from what I've read, is kind of keeps that at bay right now. It's kind of covered up and holding it. And as that is let loose and that moves, we know what has happened up north. Was it McKinleyville where they Plymouth where they took out the dams?
Plymouth.
And there was a lot of repercussions to the wildlife. So I do have real concerns there, and I think we all should.
You have anything to add?
I'm going to hold myself.
Okay. Anything else to finish with? All right, so we'll open it up to the public input, and if you have a comment, please come to the microphone, and I'm sure we have some folks on Zoom as well. So, yeah, if you want to come up and make a statement or a comment about this item, please come up.
Good afternoon. My name is Jason Tarmino. I'm the government affairs person for Pacific Gas and Electric Company. I'm what's known as your single point of contact, which is the person that you can call when you have questions or concerns, and I'm the conduit to the rest of the organization. And as you all know, I have many answers, but on certain things, I bring in experts. I wanted to be here today just to let the community know and to let you all know that we care. I'm always available to you, and we've had lots of meetings about this, and I'll continue to do that and advocate for you to have the information that you need. Thank you very much.
Mahim, Santama Kekanema, Nicole Anna, Round Valley Kayana.
Kintama.
My name is Nicole Whipple. I'm a member of the Round Valley Indian tribes, and I'm also a descendant of the Yuki and Pomo tribes. I am also a resident of Lake County, and I've been a part of all of these In the past 3 years, I've been a part of the Eel River Coalition and groups that you've been discussing. And just to share a little bit of background, as I am a Round Valley tribal member, I shared that I am a Yuki descendant, and I am the great-great-granddaughter of Eben Tillotson and Ida Graves, who were, Ida Graves was Habemetal Pomo. So I do have ties here. My youngest daughter is a great-great-granddaughter of Chief Augustine, and she is part of the Scotts Valley. So I also have ties to our traditional houses here. One of the things that I wanted to share with you is that some of the discussions that aren't brought up about this project is that Lake Pillsbury sits on top of Yuki territories. Lake County history of, the Pomo history shows that after the creation of the dam, which clearly shows the headwaters and the dam are Yuki territories, then there are Pomo territories around. And so I would like you to take that into consideration when you think about, as we talk about water rights and the people who are being harmed in this. Those are my tribal people. And it's not only the reason why in the conversations that I was present in, where maybe you may have felt dismissed or pushed aside, is because as we came together to discuss the betterment of the entire riverway, and talking about fish, these are andronymous fish that need to travel to and from, the same way that our people, our tribal people, traveled to and from the headwaters to the ocean in time for food sustenance and sovereignty. The creation of this dam was intentional because the fishery was so strong that it was economic value to the colonizers to take not only the water source, but the fishery, and to forcibly move our tribal people off of our ancestral Aboriginal territories into reservations, small ceded reservations. Today, our people believe that these reservation areas are, it's gold to them. These small little spots. I come from the largest land-based tribe in between Mendocino Lake and Sonoma, and we have barely had the time or the capacity to be able to manage those lands or take care of those lands. Our water right has always been there, and we are just now at a time to embrace and have the funding to be able to do so. So when you take in consideration your
So if you're wrapping up, your
Okay.
3 minutes is.
as you take in consideration writing to FERC, I'd just like to inform you that just recently FERC did approve the rights of a tribe in Nevada, I believe. Arizona, where they stood heavily on this trust responsibilities given to those tribal people and their ancestral territories. And this was the same diversion system. So, just be aware that there is already legal precedents, new precedents, as well as tribal water rights that are in jeopardy here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I know that with the tribes locally, being Robinson and Upper Lake, where I know that when it comes to territory for cultural artifacts after Mendocino Complex fire, I know a lot of the work that was done up there to find artifacts after the fire and be monitors. That was the area when considering that concept, not historical lands, which is also historical lands that are based on maps right now are linguistic maps, which gives an indication and implication where folks may have been. But at the same time, it's still one of those things that historically we need to, there's more pieces to the puzzle, which is more of the reason why we have these rules for cultural artifacts, AB 52 and all these other laws in place for the tribes to find how their history, where they're mapping, everything in place, right? And so I'm not speaking for those tribes. I know that neither have been really in position with a stance in my district, so I'm speaking to them. I also have ties to other tribes in Mendocino County, and I don't speak for them. I can't speak for them. They have a leadership, And that's one of the things I think is frustrating as well, because when these things are written or when they're stated that the tribes, and most of the time they're referring to the Round Valley Indian tribes, which is the biggest tribe, which has a really big land base and has a lot of different history because of the fact that they were all, after Indian reorganization, all put on that reservation, which was unfortunate. And so there is a lot of historical, information there. Right, well, of course, that's in the linguistic maps as well. However, there were Pomo villages there as well. So, I mean, we can all talk about historical mapping and whatnot. The reality is after that dam came up, there were still tribes that were affected in another way. I know I've heard stories from Mendocino and Sonoma families and elders that, had salmon and talked about that. So, there's different moving parts, and I think that's the difficult thing, because when the agencies come forward, they go to specific folks and give them specific information that sensationalizes them towards one thing. And, here's the thing. I want there to be more robust discussion. I want there to be a follow-up, not let's just move this forward and we'll figure out afterwards, because we know as a tribe, as the tribes, they've usually not been given the best scenario, right? They've always it's been the same thing. Well, here, this is something that I think Lake County feels similar to when it comes to that. So, this thing being pushed along, not having people along with us to be able to speak the same thing has been very difficult. And I do know of other tribes, but I'm not going to speak for them, but they've had an opposition to this situation as well in different counties. So, but I'll leave it at that, because I know that, again, I can't speak for them. Is there anyone else that has public input?
Hello, good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Amanda Martin, and I stand here before you as the Executive Director of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce. So I'm representing the voices of businesses and residents who care deeply about the future of our community. We wish to emphasize the critical importance of including Lake County in the decision-making process. It is vital that as the dam and the lake are within our county's borders, the people and businesses of Lake County have a voice in this discussion. Any decision made about the future of Scotts Dam will have significant implications to our community, and it is only fair and just that we are given an opportunity to participate in a process that will shape our environment and economy for generations to come. We believe that decisions about the lake must include those who live here, work here, and rely on the lake for their livelihoods. The exclusion of Lake County from these discussions has been both unfair and short-sighted, as it overlooks the direct impact such decisions will have on our local economy, tourism, and quality of life. So we just want to commend the Lake County Board of Supervisors for your ongoing efforts to ensure that Lake County has a seat at the table. It is through your leadership that we hope to ensure our community's voice is heard and respected in the decisions that directly affect us. So that's all, and thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Sir?
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Tote. My wife and I are full-time residents of Lake Pillsbury. I'm also the secretary of Lake Pillsbury Fire Protection District. So I'm not going to elaborate much on what's already been said, but first of all, I would like to thank you folks for the effort and the energy that you're putting towards this. First thing, you had mentioned fire suppression. We were up there for both the ranch fire and the complex fire, so I was able to firsthand see in a fire mitigation situation how valuable that lake is. Second of all, water retention. Going back to the history, the reservoir was first built because they were realizing that there was not sufficient flow downstream at Van Arnsdale to complete a year-round power production facility. I also live on Salmon Creek, which is the third largest tributary feeding the lake, and I can tell you that every summer it dries up. It is not a spawning ground. It's not Rice Fork, and it's not the main fork of the Eel River, but it is the third largest tributary feeding the river. With that said, I do believe that it has been an active part. It has evolved to the current ecosystem, and to remove that dam would be a catastrophic disaster, a man-made disaster. We hike up and down the creeks and the rivers, and I feel that there is no way that the eagle could survive in the flows that are even on a good summer. I don't believe that the elk and all the other waterfowl, we see geese and you name it, and all of that would be gone, and it would be a man-made environmental disaster, in my opinion. Last of all, one thing that I haven't heard touched on today is the recreational value of the lake. PG&E, from what I have heard, is threatening to close all the recreation facilities, including the campgrounds. We were up there when the campgrounds were closed during COVID. People are still going to go there. And during COVID, the campgrounds were closed, and that basin turned into a dump heap. And it's not everybody, it's the 1 or 2% that just don't care that thrashed that basin. So recreationally, that lake is very valuable. So with that, once again, I would like to thank you folks for all the effort that you've put into this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize. I missed a major point that I also wanted to make in case anybody wants to speak to this. Unfortunately, we were kind of a little late to the game, but in 2022, there was a deal struck between PG&E and the Mendocino Land Trust, and this was brought to you by the CPUC that forced them through, I don't know if it was a lawsuit or if it was just a settlement of sorts, where there is a conservation easement on the entirety of the Potter Valley project that will not allow for any type of development. If I remember, and I'm paraphrasing, what's allowed is you can maintain or renew whatever is already there. So it will be great when we get to renew the docks that lead to nothing, because there's no more water there. And we're being told, and I'm reading in some of the media that's discussing this topic, that we need to think about the future of recreation. That restriction of that easement is so restrictive that there is no such thing as Lake Pillsbury 2.0.
Yeah.
We are being completely, I have never seen the ability of other agencies able to cancel our economic development without us being able to provide public comment. That process, in my opinion, is absurd, that we were not even allowed to provide public comment at that point in time.
And I'm sorry.
We missed it.
With that being said, another thing that's been very disturbing to me, and you mentioned it earlier, was that you were not invited to the table in the initial talks. And a couple of the things that to me are disturbing about that is they were brought up by special interest groups and politicians that are not even within the district of Lake Pillsbury. And so not only were these talks.
You've had your 3 minutes, but I'll let you wrap it up real quick. You want to wrap it up real
that's
quick?
fine. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I apologize for not bringing that up earlier.
It's all right. There's other things that I'm remembering now too, so it's okay.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for addressing this topic, which has been close to my heart from either late summer 2017 or 2018, which is when I became aware of this project. So I sincerely appreciate your efforts. My name is Melissa Fulton. I've been a resident of Lake County since January of 1989. I was up there on a camping weekend and heard from the then volunteer fire chief for Lake Pillsbury about PG&E's proposal. And I contacted
At that time, I was employed as the CEO of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce. I retired 3.5 years ago, so that's not my position here today at all. I contacted Senator Mike Thompson about this. We had a meeting, telemeeting, if you will, with he and 2 of his representatives. I also brought it to the Board of Supervisors and obviously to the Board of Directors of the Lake County Chamber at the time. The chair of our Governmental Affairs Committee at the time went up to Lake Pillsbury in September and took videos of the influx, and I should say non-influx of water into the lake at that time. And so that doesn't happen just in drought years. It happens in years of rain as well. I'm somewhat disturbed by the fact, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong in this, but my understanding is that the reason that PG&E is wanting to get out of their license is because it's costing them money. And yet I read, even within the last 2 months, about the tremendous billions of dollars that PG&E is experiencing in profit to them and their shareholders, their investors. So this is extremely disturbing to me, along with the fact that this whole project was begun by U.S. Representative Congressman Jared Huffman, who has absolutely no tie in any part of his district to the County of Lake. And it's already been addressed that the County of Lake has been sorely missing at the table. And and it was probably late 2018 or early 2019 that I called Congressman Huffman's office.
Melissa, if you can wrap it up. Go ahead.
And requested a meeting at the table, and I was told that wasn't possible. So thank you again. I appreciate the fact that you are coming forward, and I've read your letters. I think they express very well the issues that Lake County has faced in trying to address an issue that is totally within their boundaries. Thank you.
And that was $2.5 billion in profits.
Is there any other public comment?
Good afternoon, Carol Cinquini, Lake Pillsbury Alliance. I want to thank you all for your hard work on this. I thought your documents were excellent. They really address a lot of the undervalued and unsaid things that we need to be evaluated to really know what is best for this project. And I think that was critically important. I also want to point out that PG&E this is a PG&E process, and so they're not under any obligation to forward any of our comments on to FERC at this time. So it's going to be really important that we continue this, stay strong, and be very prepared during the FERC process, which will open July 29th. Thank you so much for what you've done to put this together.
Any other comments?
We have some on Zoom when you're
Some on Zoom? Okay. So if you can unmute.
We have Jonathan Cronin.
All right.
If somebody can unmute. Neither do I.
So, Sam, are you able to promote Johanna to co-host, please? Thank you.
She wants to be added to promoted. Okay. Oh, well, she wanted she asked to be promoted herself, okay. So while they're doing that, I just want to state, because some things have been brought up and it sparked back into my mind. I also wanted to say that I'm in no way I don't have any ill will towards any of the other agencies, tribes, government, water agencies. I think they've all been put in the same position we have. They need a source of water, so they're doing what they feel they need to for their constituency. Even Congressman Huffman, I understand he's trying to do what he needs to for his constituency and the tribe. I know that they are as well. I think the process is really what frustrates me the most. So that way we can do what we need to for our constituency as well. And so I just had to say that, plus the transparency thing. I mean, it's a difficult situation, like Carol had mentioned, that there's no Brown Act or anything that covers what's going on when it comes to PG&E. Even that proved to be the situation with the NOI parties, where we were voted, we weren't allowed to be part of that group. And it wasn't Round Valley, it wasn't Sonoma Water, it wasn't Mendocino Inland Water or Humboldt. It was actually a nonprofit that had the say for that. And so that might have been able to kind of let some of this animosity die down if we were a part of that when we put the $100,000 to be part of that group. And then that didn't happen. And so those are the type of things I think that are frustrating. Even when it comes to the fires, there's always statements like, well, it wouldn't really make a difference, they can go to Mendocino Lake or whatever the case may be. However, I was there during the August Complex fire, and when there was a potential for it to affect the Lake Pillsbury Ranch, and I watched over the hill to Glenn County, helicopter going back and forth. I talked with numerous forest hotshots, I call them, stating we'd be toast in Lake County if that wasn't there. There's also statements that there needs to be more work on the land. Well, that's true as well. You're talking about a lot of Mendocino National Forest areas, and now when we're looking at these cuts and whatnot, I don't know how that looks now, but I just, after some folks talked, I felt like saying that, plus we're having issues with getting people on Zoom, so I figured I'd plug some time up.
Frank Lynch is ready.
All right, Frank.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I have the flu, and I think you'd rather I was not there. So I just wanted to thank you for all your work that you've done, and I would echo a couple of things that have been said. One, I think Lake County has been slighted throughout this process, and I salute you for trying to stay engaged. I also echo Supervisor Sabatier's comments about trying to find the economic balance here, in that dam removal and coming up with the hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, for replacement infrastructure that has to be considered with the loss of the lake is something that needs to be certainly examined. Our outreach to the feds and to the state, and looking for some other entity to be formed to take over the operation of the lake is certainly warranted. And again, I would like to thank the board and your staff for doing excellent work on the documents you prepared. So again, thank you very much.
Anyone else on Zoom?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment if possible.
All right, John, go ahead.
So PG&E equipment has started multiple fires in the last 10 years in Northern California. PG&E had $2.5 billion in profits last year. PG&E needs to assist with wildfire mitigation. We in Lake County, we need Lake Pillsbury for fire mitigation. There's elk, deer, bear, otters, mountain lions, and other wildlife that's all going to perish when the dam is removed. We also have paid $7.5 billion in California for new additional water storage, which would be nice if we could apply that towards refurbishing the dam.
Yes.
I use Lake Pillsbury for recreation. It's a beautiful area, and I hate to see that dam come out. Thank you for your time.
And that was John Cronin. He wasn't able to mute. They said his name before, so I just want to make sure they knew that his name was...
No further.
Yeah. Nothing further on Zoom? Okay, just real quick, because I know this is a sensitive subject. It's a very important subject. If there's anyone else that'd like to come up and say something else for another minute, I know I let a couple people go over, so I want to make sure I give that opportunity to anyone. All right.
Thank you for the extra time. I left out a few things too. I was, really worried about, I really wanted to speak on the fire situation as well. I have been working, I ended up in Lake County because I wanted to be boots on the ground as I started my, work as a water protector and policy advocate and working on these Eel River projects. And I've got to learn a lot. I was in these presentations, I got to speak on things about like how I grew up in Redwood Valley. I'm from Round Valley, grew up my middle school, high school years in Redwood Valley. And so when the complex fire came through, I was well aware, my family being in fire, that fire crept over into my relatives and into the valley, taking lives because it intentionally crept around Potter Valley, which is irrigated, right? And so I knew that. But it took me to be working with Tara over these last months to realize, as we worked on two different spots, one in Potter Valley and one up further by the river on the other side of the river, that to see it, we've seen the actual fire effects. There was a town hall meeting where, the state CAL FIRE's chief shared that we fight fire on the ground, not with water. And so I think that's something to take in consideration as well. And also the presentation that was given earlier. As a land steward, we are looking at all the sickness in our oaks and we don't even have tule. I mean, I'm sitting here hurt, like, you guys can't even take care of this lake here. I'm over here working with our tribes to help save the hitch and the tule. And then I have to come and fight with you. It's not a fight, but, express how important it is that you let us take care of our side of our river and let it become a free-flowing river, because having another bacteria-infested cesspool is not getting us anywhere, as well as the number of Eel River tribes who are down south. If this dam were to collapse, it would flood all the way to Benbow, and that's deep. That's why the conversations are always about, how we work together, versus when it felt like you guys came in, it was always like, oh, we're the headwaters and we deserve to be entitled to be the only say. That was the feeling, what it felt like when you guys came into these meetings. But to wrap up, the presentation earlier, that sickness in those trees is the same sickness that's being spread every time we dump those bacteria-infested waters elsewhere. That's that drainage, when rivers are not supposed to be flowing all the time, they are supposed to be dry at times because they are recharging the rest of the watershed. And so I think we need to look at the water as a whole and the entire system versus just one spot, and how long that dam has created the droughts. And then these 5 counties that are fighting for our Eel River water have been for the 5 consecutive years. I drive in and out, commute every day to Mendocino County, and everything is flooded. So why are we not considering how to work with those, manage this lake here for your recreation, because I can't even drink my water from the tap. This is our water source. But I drive back and forth and see all these areas flooded. I drive down south, everything's flooded, but everybody is so dependent on this, again, bacteria-filled cesspool, muddy slush. I mean, let's be realistic.
Thank you. Nothing's worse than having an echo chamber, so that's why I felt the need to allow you to speak. I'm not going to comment on the things you said because we can be here all day. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to come up? I'll close the public input. I'll bring it back to the board for action or discussion or whatever.
I have no need to change any of the letters that we have presented, as well as the public comments that will be submitted to PG&E. And so I'm going to go ahead and move forward with... I apologize, I didn't see
Oh,
that.
go ahead. I thought you were going for action. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to make my comments. I did watch the Humboldt County meeting from a couple of weeks ago. They were the only party of the MOU that had the conversation in public, which I thought was very interesting. Listening to their concerns of down the river, I feel for them. They want to restore their fisheries. They have industry. They want a healthy river. What I didn't hear from them was any talk about, well, they did talk about the pike minnow, but they didn't talk about the sediments. They didn't talk about the potential collapse, the instability. There's a lot of issues that I think that they're not even aware of. Again, everyone is looking out for their own interests, but it just, I can't wrap my head around the fact that this dam has to come down to build another reservoir somewhere else. In this day and age, when we're so focused on water capacity and storage and recharging groundwater, that's exactly what this project already does. So, here we are finally having this conversation in public after years and years in closed session. I'm glad that we have people in attendance. I'm glad people are watching. We can finally send these letters that we've been wanting to send for a long time. I think that's all I'm going to say right now.
Supervisor Rasmussen, Vice Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and the river flows. There was no mention, sorry.
Okay.
There's no mention in Humboldt County about the potential of the rivers just drying up each year, which we know happens. So I think there could have been a lot more collaboration between all of the parties, a better conversation, better product, and we wouldn't be here where we are today here.
Yeah, I'll be brief because everything's really been covered, but I appreciate the work of our two supervisors involved in this and our staff members. And, I know there's a lot of stakeholders with concerns, but I don't feel like, the Lake County concerns have been listened to. And, I have a lot of concerns about the impact on our community here. So I'm in support of sending these letters as written.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll go one at a time rather than all of them together. Move to approve the comments as provided in our attachments to Pacific Gas and Electric Company in response to their draft application for surrender of license and application for non-project use of project lands.
I'll second that.
And for the letter,
Lord.
authorize the chair to sign.
And authorize the chair to sign.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the letter to California Governor Gavin Newsom highlighting considerations regarding Scott Dam decommissioning and consideration of Executive Order number N1625.
And I'll second that.
And authorize the chair to sign.
And authorize the chair to sign.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Appreciate the assist. C, I move to approve the letter to federal agencies regarding Scott Dam decommissioning in relation to recent executive orders from President Donald Trump and authorize the chair to sign.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for this item. Thank you, Patrick, Matthew, Lake Pillsbury Alliance for coming. Anyone else who made comments, I appreciate you coming and making your comments. Lloyd, as well, thank you. And I know that we've done a lot of work in closed session on this for quite some time. We're not, one of the things that I'd like to say is we do have to, worry about our lake, but this is a situation that's in our jurisdiction. We have to pay attention to it. We have to do what we can for our constituents. And it's just, thanks again.